This weekend, Matthew ran into what we call a mystery failure. This is where the printer just seems to stop. The parts failed, nothing's happening. I'm gonna pull the cover off the printer here and let Matthew tell us what he saw when he came in.
Yeah, so came in this morning and our print was just sitting like this. The print head was in the middle of the print job, seemingly just stopped. If we look at our screen, all of the things are set to cold. We're still seeing the IP address from the print server. This was printing on the print server, and the print server did give an error, and it said firmware disconnect.
Okay, we'll put a picture of that in the video, and the part here is just a simulation for you guys. So there's a couple of tests. The possible causes for this are: server had a power glitch. That will reset the printer, but it will have a different log entry or no log entry. Another possible cause is somebody hit the e-stop button or glitched the cable. That will generally have a different server entry as well. This last cause, the heater has a short or there's a bad connector connected to the heater, is what we're going to test for. And the test goes, we're going to test the connector, then test the heater, and that's coming up next. So when taking a look at this, got some analysis here. The umbilical, this is the older revision umbilical. It's installed incorrectly and it's kind of flopping around in here. That's going to cause a cooling leak, and it may cause the sensors to fail for the e-stops. And but that's not a failure, but that's just worth noting. We're going to fix that on the way through. We've also got one heater connector here looking a little out of place. If you can see that guy, that's really suspect in my mind. We're going to take a close look at that. And then lastly, this heater was flopped out like this and wearing out of the clamp. So this thing should have been mounted up closer, tied down, or if your printer has the cover put over the heater cables to keep them from doing that. So the test I'm going to do now, the first one is to see if we can get the heaters to glitch. What I've done here is turn all the heaters on. So I picked 180, 190 degrees, so we're not too hot, but hot enough to see if something's going to happen. And basically this test consists of coming in here, wiggling the heaters around. You want to grab the cables, pull them up and down, not too rough, but enough to see if you can't trigger a reset out of this thing. And I'm not really getting anything out of these heaters. And then secondly, you want to feel them. They're all warm. I can tell by the touch of my hand there. They're actually working. And it doesn't appear to me like the heaters have an internal short. If they do have an internal short, this test will generally fail. The other thing that may happen is you may have to go all the way up to print temperature to make them fail. And just keep that in mind as we go through the video. Okay, so for the second test, we're going to look at the connectors. So I've got the same scenario. I've got the heaters warmed up, and I'm going to go through and gently wiggle these back and forth, flex the wires a little bit, smoosh them together, spread them apart, and just kind of generally inspect each connection. What I'm looking for is I want to make sure that the heater's actually plugged in there real solid, which number 1 and number 2 are. Number 3 back here isn't plugged in all that solid, and when I wiggle and flex this around, it pops out, and if I wiggle it enough, there, it reset the printer. And there you can see the reset screen. And that was just from moving this thing around on print connector number 3. That is our failure. For the repair phase of this, these are the tools we're going to need. We need a heat gun and some shrink tube. Make sure the connections are good when we make them. We need a spare heater connector already cabled up. You can contact us for one of these. And 2.5mm screwdriver, various hex wrenches, meter to check the connections, and that's it. First thing I'm going to do, you guys have all done this a bunch of times, is remove the tube adapter clamp. I realize the camera angle's not the best on that, but they actually broke into 2 pieces. So this one has been in service way longer than it should be. And it was wearing, and it was going to damage heater number 1. The next thing I'll want to do is pull my heater connections and kind of move these off to the side as best I can. You don't want to flex these too much. Just kind of keep them out of your way. Unplug number 3. You can do all of this with the lights on. It's not a big deal. These connections are low voltage, and the lights are intended for us to be able to work on the printer and see what we're doing. If you need some additional light, don't hesitate to put some on the edge of the screen there. And what I'll often do is just set the fasteners, and anything I remove either on the build plate, or if you're afraid of scratching your build plate, I'll go ahead and drop these things on the floor of the printer so I have them. So now I'm able to lift up this top piece. It kind of slides out of a groove. And what we've got here, pull this up. There's the connections we're going to have to make on number 3. Oh, right there. We're going to have to take, let me turn this around. It's a little hard to see. You have to go this way. This connector right here, see how it's damaged? You see the holes right here? I think this hole's, the 2 of these are shorting together. We're gonna have to punch this out and put the new one in. When we went to look at the job to connect the, fix the connector, we realized right away we're gonna have to pull the heaters out. There's no way to get at this thing without damaging them. So I'm just gonna drop all the heaters. And you notice how I've got the build plate up here close? That way, if I have something happen and the heater falls, it doesn't go very far and can't be damaged. So I always will do this work with my build plate fairly close to my print head. So first thing we need to do is prep our spare connector. We've got way too much wire on here, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut this short. That's about double the length of what's in the printer there, and you'll be able to cram that back down into the top of the print head with no problem. We want to go ahead and separate these guys, and we want to strip them. There's a lot of ways to do this as well. I'm just going to do it with a thumbnail here and get these all prepped up and ready to go, just like that. You can do that however you want to. And then we've got 2 choices here. We've got these solder connectors you can use with a heat gun, and we've got shrink tube and a soldering iron. We're going to go ahead and give these a try. These are new. We're going to see how it works out. Having already prepped our end connector, it's time to work on the top of the print head. Looks to me like the umbilical simply came loose through hours of printing, and we're going to go ahead and tighten this nut down. So I'm going to go ahead and screw that on there. Before I put this back together, I'm going to snug that with the pliers. But what I want to, there, it's all connected, that's good. Then what we need to do here to preserve as much wire as we can, we're going to trim right by the connector. You want to keep as much of this as you possibly can. And by the way, the sign of a bad connector, you see these distorted holes and these little plastic clips are kind of worn off on the end. These are what keep it from sinking through the top plate. So that's a pretty badly damaged one. It was definitely needing replacement. What we're doing here is we are pre-shrinking one side of this connection because it's awful tight in there in the printer. So we're just going to go ahead and expose one portion of the connector. It's a little hard for me to get in the right position. There we go. And we're just shrinking around the one side there. Not getting the solder because we're not ready for that yet. And I'm going to repeat with the other 2 wires. And we'll just get these exposed. So only the bottom side is shrinking. And this will kind of hold everything together when we go in the printer. So you want to connect these together however you can. We're going to start with one here and show it on the camera. And these little connectors are fun because you just heat them until the solder melts, and then you give it a respectable cool down time. There, I've got the melted solder. I'm done. And now I'm just going to let that cool, and I'm going to repeat with the other joints. We found a pretty good alternative in this little butane torch for precision work. We found we can just get in here, give this thing a quick blast, and it's all over pretty quickly. See that? You might consider this if you're using these connectors. The other thing you can do is give it a little cold spray to kind of keep the rubber from breaking up, and then you got a good connection. All right, when you've got your connector work done, I've got all 4 of them hooked up here. What you're going to want to do is a quick test. Plug all the heaters back in. I've got a heater in all 3 connectors, and it turns out that we've got another glitch. I'm going to wiggle this connector right here, and Matthew's going to film the screen, and you can see there a little bit of playing around with this heater, and I'll end up with there, see the temperature rise? That little glitch? That's a failed heater. That will eventually reset the machine. In fact, I think it just did. There you go. So the truth is, this was heater number 3 from the job before. And we had both glitches. We had a glitch in the connector, and we have a glitch in the heater. The remedy on this, unfortunately in this case, is to run another heater. Okay, I'm here getting ready to pack all the wires into the top of the print head. You can be pretty aggressive with how those go in there, but I thought I would show the connector. You squeeze in on these two posts, and there's a little key right here that the top of this connector lines up with. You slide it in there, squeeze, and push up firmly, and both sides should come through and spread out just like that. And you should be able to push down on the connector and not get any resistance. There's 3 slots on either side of this. You use these to bring your wires out of the print head, and on the other side you use 2 of them to bring your cooling tubes out, and the middle one to do heater connector number 2. You want to just kind of pack all this down in there, getting it into either the slots or down inside the case, and it clicks and locks right there. Once you've done that, you take these long fasteners and screw it down. And you can generally get these started by hand, finish them up with the screwdriver, and that concludes putting the print head back together. All I got to do next is put the heaters on, and we're ready to print. Okay, I've got this thing about put together. I have the heaters mounted. I'm about ready to put my tube adapters on, and I got a replacement tube adapter clamp. These things, this is an older Rev one. See these big pieces on the bottom? You want to get rid of these. Just take a cut these right off. They hit the back of the printer. That's an old revision. This will grip the last heater sufficiently to work. So I just want to point that out. I'm going to mount that in a moment. But the star of the show, would you come over to the panel, Matthew, is I'm going to warm up heater number 3 because it has a bunch of gook on it. If you need to do this, use the unload filament command. That way you're not pushing filament anywhere crazy. We're going to heat number 3 up, and then we're going to get the polymer off of it while it's warm. This is a way that you can prevent damage to heaters. And I'll be able to scrape that polymer off. If you do it when it's cold, you risk damaging everything because the polymer's hard. You can see here the polymer's starting to liquefy. That's fine, because I can go ahead and just take the pick, kind of dig this stuff out of there. It's not too hot. Get with your fingers. You can get this big old chunk out of here. And the rest can be cleaned off with a brush. And that's just what I wanted to show you. Warm polymer is your friend when cleaning up heaters and disasters. And there, that's pretty clean top part of the heater. We'll just call it good for there. Alright guys, this is all put together. Got my tube adapter clamp mounted here. Heater shields are all in place. I've got these, if you notice when you move the print head all the way over to the extents, it's not putting overly large strain on the heaters. You want to just keep an eye on that. Got my heater connectors down, a little bit of wire management here. This machine is now ready for calibration.